The studio lights glowed with that soft golden brilliance the morning audience adored, but behind the scenes, the air felt stiff, tense, and oddly heavy. Even the camera crew sensed it. Something about the energy was off the moment Liam Neeson stepped through the doors of ITV Studios. He greeted everyone politely, shook hands, smiled, but the warmth behind those gestures felt thinner than usual, stretched tight over something unspoken. His shoulders were square, his eyes tired, the kind of weary that didn't come from sleepless nights but from carrying something too long. Still, he was Liam Neeson, legendary, dignified, a presence who didn't need to raise his voice or change his expression to command a room. Producers whispered among themselves, exchanging cautious glances, but no one dared say anything. A celebrity in a mood was nothing new. A celebrity of this caliber in a mood, though, that was different. Lorraine Kelly sat on her signature pastel sofa, flipping through her cue cards with a calmness practiced over decades. She'd interviewed everyone from nervous newcomers to political firestorms. She had handled on-air meltdowns, last-minute cancellations, and controversial remarks. The show thrived because she could maintain that warm, soothing tone no matter the chaos swirling around her. But even she could feel something electric humming in the background today, like the early tremor of a storm about to break. "All right, people," her producer called, clapping her hands. 30 seconds, let's keep it smooth. Lorraine lifted her mug, took a slow sip, and set it down precisely in its spot. She inhaled quietly, a deep, centering breath. Liam sat down opposite her, adjusting the cuffs of his jacket like a man bracing for impact. A polite smile hovered on his lips, but his eyes stayed guarded. "Everything all right?" Lorraine asked softly, off-air. He gave a tiny nod. "Just a long week." His voice was steady, gentle, but clipped. The theme music played. The audience applause boomed. Cameras rolled. "And welcome back," Lorraine chirped, turning her full beam of warmth toward the viewers. "Now, joining us this morning is the wonderful Liam Neeson, here to talk about his brand new thriller, Winter Reckoning, already getting quite the buzz." "Liam, it's so lovely to have you." The audience clapped again. Liam nodded politely, leaning forward a fraction. "Thank you, Lorraine. Good to be here." Smooth, professional, controlled. Lorraine, always eager to start with a touch of light-hearted humor, smiled playfully. "Well, Liam, you have quite the reputation now. You know, the brooding action man with that iconic growl and that very particular set of skills." The audience laughed, expecting him to laugh with them. He did not. Instead, he offered a small, stiff smile. "I like to think my roles carry more nuance than just brooding." Of course, Lorraine laughed, lifting her hands disarmingly. "But you have to admit, there's a theme." Liam's eyebrow lifted almost imperceptibly. "Themes are not formulas. They're depth, emotional grounding, not repetition." The audience's laughter softened awkwardly. Lorraine blinked, just slightly thrown. Usually celebrities took the teasing with ease, especially veterans like him. She tried again. "Well, critics have noted." "Critics," Liam interrupted, voice cooling several degrees, "often speak without understanding the process or the soul behind a performance." The crew stiffened. This wasn't playful tension, it was brewing into something sharper. Lorraine maintained her smile, but there was a tiny crease now between her brows. "Liam, I promise I'm not attacking your work. We're just chatting." "Chatting," he repeated quietly, the word landing flat. "Is that what this is?" That subtle shift in his tone sent a ripple through the studio. The producer gestured frantically behind the cameras. "Slow down, lighten it, redirect." Lorraine caught it from the corner of her eye and tried to do just that. "Well, why don't we talk about the film itself?" she said brightly. "Winter Reckoning is getting some mixed reactions. Some folks are calling the plot a bit over the top." Liam's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. "Over the top," he echoed, the corners of his mouth tightening. Lorraine nodded, still trying to keep things airy. "Just what some have said, not me." "I thought it." "Who exactly?" Liam asked, his voice low. "Your researchers, the people who hand you cards and lines to poke at guests with." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. A sound guy visibly froze mid-step. Lorraine set her cards down slowly, her smile wavering. "Liam, that's not fair. I'm simply referencing the conversation around the film." "Conversation," he murmured, leaning back. "Or provocation." "Liam, you brought me here to talk about my work," he said, voice rising slightly, not in volume, but in firmness. "Not to chip away at it with cheap shots." Lorraine exhaled, visibly shocked by his directness. "I'm not taking cheap shots," she said, her tone thinning. "This is morning TV. We're just discussing." The backstage corridor pulsed with a nervous, uneven rhythm, producers whispering urgently into headsets, assistants darting between dressing rooms, camera operators exchanging wide-eyed looks. Everyone had witnessed celebrities storm off before, but rarely with the cold, simmering composure Liam Neeson carried. It wasn't a tantrum, it wasn't theatrics, it felt like steel finally bending under too much pressure. Lorraine remained on set for another few minutes, holding the show together with the professionalism only decades in live television could forge. But once the segment ended and they cut to a commercial break, she stood abruptly, handing her cards to an assistant and walking off stage with a stiff jaw and carefully measured breaths. The moment she was out of the audience's view, the pleasant smile fell from her face entirely. She headed straight for the backstage lounge, murmuring quiet apologies to crew members who scrambled to give her space. Lorraine wasn't angry, not exactly, but shaken. Embarrassed, even. She'd interviewed some of the most difficult personalities in entertainment, but nothing had ever quite blindsided her like the controlled, icy disapproval in Liam's voice. It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it, like a man who had been holding something heavy for too long and had finally let his grip slip. Across the hallway, Liam stood in front of a dressing room mirror, rolling the tension out of his shoulders with slow, deliberate breaths. His mic lay abandoned on the counter, coiled like a discarded snake. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across his face, deepening the fatigue etched into the lines around his eyes. He tugged at his tie, loosening it until it hung unevenly. A stage manager approached him with audible caution, knocking softly on the open door. Liam, Lorraine would like a word, if you're up for it." He exhaled through his nose, not in irritation but in resignation. "All right." The two walked toward each other from opposite ends of the corridor like actors in a long-awaited confrontation scene. When they finally stopped a few feet apart, the tension between them hummed like an electrical wire. Lorraine spoke first. "Liam, what on earth just happened out there?" He met her gaze steadily, his expression softer than it had been on air but still guarded. "I didn't come here to be mocked," he said, voice low and gentle rather than sharp. "Not today, not after the week I've had." Lorraine's face softened despite her frustration. "What did I say that felt like mocking? I've teased guests 1,000 times. You've been on my show before. Today was different," he cut in, not unkindly. "Maybe it wasn't your intention, but it landed like a jab. And I'm tired, Lorraine. More tired than I've let on." He took a slow breath, pressing a hand to the back of his neck. "My mother's been ill," he said quietly, voice barely above a whisper. "I've been flying back and forth between here and Belfast all week. Little sleep, too much worry, and then walking out onto that stage, being teased about being a caricature of myself, it felt like one blow too many." Lorraine's eyes softened instantly, the tension in her frame dissolved. "Liam, I'm so sorry," she whispered, her hands lowering to her sides as her posture eased. "I had no idea, truly." "I know," he said, "and it's not your fault. But in the moment, it felt like a knife." Lorraine looked genuinely upset with herself now. She stepped closer but stopped when she noticed a flicker of hesitation in him. She didn't want to push. "I would never intentionally hurt you," she said quietly. "Not you, not any guest. You know that." "I do," he replied, nodding. A quiet pause settled between them, still tense, but now threaded with understanding rather than anger. The producer approached cautiously, clearing her throat. "We still have the last 10 minutes of the show," she said, glancing between them. "Lorraine, we can pivot to another segment. Liam, if you'd like to leave quietly, we'll escort you out back to avoid the press." Liam looked down, his jaw tightening with that same mix of exhaustion and stubborn dignity. He didn't want a press circus. He didn't want headlines twisting this into something explosive. And he certainly didn't want to leave things sour.